I don't know if you guys know this, but I've lived in this house a little over a year, and never in my life have I received so much junk mail. Like this entire pile right here, this is like the past week, and they always send you these mortgage refinance offers, but they make it look like you're about to go to jail or you missed tax payments or something super like just insane. I mean, it's clickbait. It's like, just look at this one for example. Like, it's pretty good. I definitely opened this in a rush. Confidential, personal notification received. And those are like the only two lines that you can see when you get the letter. And I don't have a shredder. I can't throw them away because they have like, sometimes they have like the last 4 digits of what I thought we'd do instead today for the opening of the video, unnecessarily. Well, so now that the overly dramatic intro of this video is done, we can go on to the main point. Let me know if this kind of sounds like you or it sounds familiar, but you ever find yourself following tutorials, Udemy courses, online written blogs, whatever, and you can do those tutorials just fine, yep, everything's making sense, you feel really good, and then you start applying to jobs and you want to go to like HackerRank or LeetCode, or you have an idea for just a tiny little project that's similar to what you did at Udemy, so you go and try and do it. You pull up your Visual Studio Code, your Sublime, and you're like, I have no idea where to start. I have no idea. I'm totally frozen, completely just stuck. I don't know what to do. The best solution for this is to pseudocode. And you might be thinking, well, Josh, yeah, I comment like what I'm supposed to do. What ends up happening is a lot of people just comment out the actual thing that they're trying to do. Like they just copy and paste the problem and then just comment it, and they're like, all right, now what do I do? There's a little bit more to it than that. You have to break down these problems into smaller pieces. Let me give you an example of what I mean by that, and it's not even code related. Basically in 7th grade in science class, we had this teacher. She looked like the teacher from the Magic School Bus. Her name was Mrs. Frisk, and it was like the dumbest experiment ever, but she was like, all right guys, I want you to write down on a piece of paper how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And we're all like, what? Get the bread, get the peanut butter and jelly, put it on the bread, slam the pieces together, cut the edges off if you're that guy, you know, that's it, you have peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And we all turn our papers in, and this was like a joke on her part, we all turn our papers in and we're like, this is the dumbest, this is the easiest A I've ever gotten in my life, and we're all failed. We all start like freaking out because we're like, what, this is a grade for real? Like what? You have to itemize these things out. And when you're faced with that up front, it just seems overwhelming, at least in code. In this case, it was like the opposite and like super easy. The peanut butter and jelly sandwich example was like you have the bread, untwist the twist tie, open the bag, stick your hand in, close your hand on the bread, pull the button, you know, do you close the bag or do you finish making a sandwich? Basically, you have to break it apart into these little slices and then fill in the logic underneath. So let me give you like an example in code of what I mean. Maybe do nested for loops, because I have a tendency to get lost in loops. Loops on loops on loops. So it would go a little something like this. You have your first list of items that you need to loop over, and you would write that in plain English. I do this because I'm like doing JavaScript comments, but you would write that in plain English. I have a list I need to search through. And then underneath that, you would have another loop that says each one of these pieces in the list has its own sub-list I need to look through. So underneath that first comment, I have a list I need to search through, you write your for loop, and then you write your logic. And in the logic section, hey, now you got another for loop that you gotta write. And that's how I have to do it when I do these algorithmic problems and code challenges and code testing. When I did those for jobs, I would get stuck like you guys. And so what I did was have to break it down into little baby plain English. But in general, you have to itemize everything that you're doing and just fill in the pieces of code. And this maybe sounds too easy, or maybe you're like, I already know how to do this. There's another method, it's called the rubber duck method. Now, if you work at like a huge corporate company and you walk through the cubicle farm, you might see, I don't know how many, but you might see a couple dudes with a little rubber duck on their desk, and you're like, bro, you're like 45. And that's not what it's for. It's this concept of being able to explain your problem out loud. Sometimes you can find your own answer. It's why people wake up in the morning and they journal everything they want to get done, because thoughts have a tendency to just kind of like bounce around in your head until you do something with them. It can be difficult to grab onto one of those before the other one kind of like takes precedence and you forget what you were doing. And so that happens a lot when you're doing these problems and you're faced with this like sense of overwhelming, I have no idea what to do. Here's another example. You get a code test and it says, hey, we want you to connect to our API, grab some data, and print that data onto the page. But we only want to see data that is like movies from 1990 to 2000. So you have a couple different steps here. I'll break it down for you. You need to figure out how to connect to their API. Do they have a key that you need to send or not? Write that down. And then underneath that, you would write, okay, how do I print this data onto the screen? And then after that, you would do, how could I filter this data while it's being printed onto the screen? Each one of those has little steps underneath that. It's very linear, just top to bottom, write out what you need to do. Let's go back to like a more kind of algorithmic front-end, little simple interview problem that I've gotten a lot. It's check for a palindrome. And so a palindrome is a word that is the same going left to right and right to left. An example of this would be race car, spelled the same forwards and backwards. The first thing you need to do, at least for me, because I guess I'm just dumb, is like, I was like, what is a palindrome? And they're like, really? And I was like, I promise this, I actually went to college, I just really don't know. And anyway, so after I figured out what a palindrome is, that took a few minutes, I had to figure out, okay, so the word is the same going forwards and backwards. How can I check for that? So if I break the letters apart, how would I do that? And then I need to figure out a way to reverse these letters, and then I need to compare it to like the first word. So if you have race car, you'd split those letters apart, then you'd reverse them, and you'd compare it to race car. And is it the same? Then yes, it's palindrome, and then you could print true, or yes, this is a palindrome, or whatever. Simple steps like that. Maybe you don't know how to split the letters apart, and maybe you don't know how to reverse them, but if you're in an interview and it's a whiteboard test, you can write that on the board. Write your logic down, just plain English, and you'll get credit for that. It's not about getting the right answer, it's about being able to explain your logic. Just try it. Before you give up, before you close the laptop screen, before you exit out of Visual Studio Code and decide that programming is not for you, give yourself a few minutes, take a piece of paper, just write apart each step that you think that you would need to do. Remember when you were like a kid, your parents would help you through math and you'd get this word problem and you'd be like, yeah, I have no idea what to do. And your parents would like sit over your shoulder and be like, well, what's the first thing that you have to do here? I think, you know, we have a lot of action figures here, so we probably have to add them together. And then he's like, okay, well, that's good. What do you have to do after that? You get what I mean? Like, that's pseudocode in a nutshell. Another benefit of pseudocode and comments is that I'm a big fan of readable code. Obviously, you want optimized code for production, readable code in the development environment. So I am going to be 100%, I don't really care if this code is ugly, as long as it's dry, right? Dry principles, do not repeat yourself. So if you copy and paste in lines over and over and over, that's bad. I just want readable code, because if I'm gonna come in there and edit what you've been creating, you know what this is supposed to say, but me coming in after you, I got no idea what this is saying. Pseudocode and comments of what everything is supposed to be doing actually helps other developers come behind you and edit your code. If you ever get into an interview and they want really optimized code, just explain that to them. Just like I write readable code because I want other developers to be able to do this. Now, it's just like gonna be you, and you're the only one coding, make an effort for, you know, make an emphasis on optimized code. So those are some of the benefits of pseudocoding. That's how to do it. I hope this video has helped you guys out. Maybe it's too simple, maybe it's just what you needed. If it is, maybe consider hitting the like button, hitting the subscribe button if you want to see more of my random intros combined with programming related topics and life and tech stuff. Be sure to check out my website, grindreel.com, if you want a resume or a template or whatever. And then I have my courses on the Grindreel Academy. Oh, it's so cheesy, but it's so good. Be sure to check out the Discord. Link for that is down in the description. It's pretty huge. These days we're at like 7,500 people, 900 people online, channels for almost everything, feedback on demand, whatever. I'm always there. A lot of people, anyone that you've seen interviewed on this channel is there. We're all just trying to grow together. So I'll see you guys